Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 60th audio file in the audiocast series known as the Q News Patriot. I am the Q News Patriot. My name is SGAnon. It's good to be back with you, although I must admit I'm much more delayed this time than I thought I was going to be, between some personal sicklies that ran through the family and then some personal situations on my own end and other balancing acts like the bug infestation that our household recently dealt with. It's been an exercise in adaptation, if there ever was one. Things are continuing to plug away on this end, just as they are hopefully continuing to plug away out there with all of you. As we march forward day after day, week after week, month after month in this great awakening, and really what amounts to a war to take back the levers of power and control in the world and put them back in the hands of mankind, we the people everywhere. It is worth noting that sometimes we get a little bogged down in life, right? Sometimes things require an unexpected or an unplanned re-strategizing, I suppose is a good way to put it. And so with that being said, I beg your patience with me, and I thank all of you. And hopefully today's audio file will be well worth the wait. I put a significant amount of research into the content for this particular file, as there are some what people will inevitably call some sensationalist claims or content in here. But it is worth noting that Q itself and the entire idea of the Great Awakening itself, and in the fashion that it is occurring and the pace that we've seen it occur worldwide relative to the amount of time evil has been in control, is sort of sensational in its own right. We're living through a period of time in the world that will never again be. There will never again be such a polarizing, universally situation or set of circumstances or conditions that allow themselves, or lend themselves, I guess is a better way to say it, excuse me, towards everyone out there coming around to the same understandings and the commonalities and a lot of the same, I think, conclusions when presented with all of the accurate and sort of unfettered or unhindered true information. And we know that that's really what Q is about in the entire process anyway, right? The dissemination of real world intelligence, the dissemination of actionable details about government, the structures of power and finance in the world, the structures of militarized power in the world. While not explicitly named necessarily, there are lots of references to the bioterrorism military-industrial complex out there in the world. We've got a number of references that show President Trump and Q are not the same person per se. President Trump is Q plus, but interactive or intersected at some very important level. And this deals with bringing mankind forward to the understanding of what's really possible and what's been happening out there in the world for a very long time. And a lot of patriots out there don't really require Q as proof or validation of such, but find it fascinating that many of the events and the situations, conditions, and scenarios that are playing out in the world right now almost seem to have been, in some regards, foretold or predicted by this entity known as Q. And really, I think that whether it be Q or anything else, what could be foretold from here on out is a furtherance and a sort of an inevitability of this great awakening that we're all on. That journey will include the de-dollarization of the world, right? The rebalancing of the powers of trade, value, and commerce everywhere around the earth. The rebalancing of military power, the removal of forward deployed forces, the usage of military might in different areas and corners of the world for personal protection, right? Protection by we the people, for we the people. Excuse me. One of the other things that I think we're going to see along in this journey, the rest of this awakening process, are cornerstone events here in the United States of America that set precedent, which will sort of govern our nation for generations. We are approaching 250 years. The nation itself being a little bit older than 250 when you go back to the colonial area in the mid 18th century here in the North American colonies. And so as we go through these events, I think it's worth highlighting that they're going to need to be cornerstone for a reason, right? They're going to inevitably include great questions of matters of state, matters of personal freedom and national security, matters of what is acceptable government overreach and what is not, what is acceptable levels of government trust and government responsibility, right? And what is not. What is national security versus national defense? What is the military primarily used for? All of these sorts of questions are being revisited, at least here in the United States of America, as a civilization. And a lot of people are finally coming around to the idea that maybe even though there are portions or components or sectors of our society that they don't prefer, or that don't really resonate true with them, yet they still have purpose, they still have value, and they still have validation, and we should still include them in our overall matrix. And that's really what I think this Great Awakening is all about. So as we move through our file today, we're going to try and be relatively brief. I know it's been a long time since we've been on air together, and many of you, I'm sure, are itching to get to a very good discussion on the things that have been going on in recent weeks. I'm a little bit under the weather. Do bear with me on that, if you don't mind. I'm not usually at my best audio intelligible self, if you will, but I'll make an extra effort to try and be clear and concise. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right to it. So we have the setup right now with a number of naval drills and dry runs that have been run around the Taiwanese island within the South China Sea, and then a deepening cooperation now on the world stage with China and Russia, and China and Belarus, as well as China and Saudi Arabia. China itself is gearing up for what I believe to be a very overt, active, and public campaign into Taiwan. And I do believe that this campaign into Taiwan will include the United States Navy being kinetically involved in some form or fashion, and we will have a warfare scenario break out between the United States Corporation Government, Inc., the U.S. federal government, the deep state military industrial complex based out of Washington, and the CCP, what remains of the CCP assets within the Chinese militaries, or the Chinese military forces, I should say. The reason I believe that this is going to come to the fold and that this is actually going to end up taking place is because it will destroy and cripple forevermore the Bretton Woods financial system of value exchange throughout the world. Remember, the Bretton Woods established the United States dollar as the reserve currency in the world, which sort of gave the dollar a fallback, a special protective status that no other currencies around the world could enjoy. And so other nations, other economies, were forced to be much more frugal, much more responsible, much more careful, deliberate about the maintenance of their reserves and the maintenance of how they do business around the world. Whereas the U.S., as we know, the Federal Reserve, not the U.S., but the Federal Reserve operating out of Washington, has utilized this special currency status to impoverish, destroy, and manipulate lives and nation, and all of the way up to nation states, all of the way around the earth for a very long time. The coming conflict scenario that I'm citing, I'm not claiming that it's going to be kinetic, but it could very well be. I'm not claiming that it's going to be only narrative warfare, although it could very well be. It could very well be just be a scare of some sort. But the reason that I believe that we're looking at this situation is because just recently the Xi Jinping government in Beijing banned the use of Apple iPhones for official government business. Now, we know that Apple iPhones, of course, they're owned by the company Apple, which is a United States company primarily manufacturing with its manufacturing base in China and very, very deep ties to the Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese government, and the Chinese economy. But it's worth noting that Apple, like all of the other, giant information, big tech companies out there and telecom companies out there, is nothing more than a glorified spyware platform. And so they have been outlawed now as it pertains to official government business out of Beijing. And that saw them lose $200 billion in value overnight. Apple is one of the largest stock companies on the NASDAQ and makes up for a tremendous amount of trading on the U.S. stock exchange. Additionally, current estimates put the Chinese involvement in the U.S. stock market out of New York at more than $4 trillion in assets, debts, in assets, equities, and debts. securities, if you will, at different points, and had the various terminology and umbrellas that those are all included in. And I'm not a financial advisor, so forgive my rudimentary description. But the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, is heavily, heavily involved in maintaining the health and well-being, if you will, the continued longitudinal functionality of the U.S. stock market by proxy through their involvement in U.S. companies. The same is true in academia. The same is true in the U.S. Treasury bond space, where China dumped more than $100 billion in Treasury bonds just over the last 10 days. And so what we are looking at with a possibility of war in the Pacific, and why I think that it is going to be a necessary component in this process as we go forward, is an absolute death knell for the ability of the U.S.-based stock market and the U.S. debt-driven, inflation-managed economy to keep up. We're looking at essentially pinning something up against the rails so much that it begins to crack and squeeze and pop, and we're going to start seeing that collapse of the financial markets, if you will, or maybe even a low yield crash beginning, I think simultaneously with this conflict kicking off and getting much more active in the Pacific. And I do not believe that's long in the wings. I think we're seeing preparatory drills right now. We've seen the Chinese military activated and begun moving very large amounts of equipment to the coastal cities immediately off the shore from Taiwan just over the last 4 to 5 days. So we are moving into a period where things are going to get much more tense, I believe, and the United States will be in an open public warfare style scenario with, the Asian superpower and one of the largest economies in the world. Now, all of that is not to say that we're going to end up in a full-scale war. I really don't know. What it is to say is that when we look at how this process is playing out in this irregular espionage warfare situation, there are certain accomplishments that we absolutely, absolutely must achieve. There's no room for failure. There's no room for coming up short. There's no room for being the Joshua at the Jericho moment, right? Kill all of them, get every last one so that we don't have to deal with this again. And yet here we are, several thousand years later, dealing with the exact same problem. We can't afford to be that way in this time and place, in this era that where we're at right now, in this era of love and light that's coming forward. We should handle everything with compassion. We should handle everything with the greatest good of humanity in mind, but we should be willing, I think, to acknowledge when certain things are necessary to not only ensure humanity's continued secure future, but also the secure future of our spiritual identity. And that's really where we're at here. This is the war to end all wars. And how do you drag every last roach from the military, mercenary, industrial intelligence complex out from the shadows and into the light? You force them in whatever way is necessary to get them to leave their home, right? We've seen these events recently with Maui. We've seen these events in Australia and other areas like that. There's been attacks on helicopters and training incidents going on in several different militaries around the world. This is absolutely a back and forth war that's going on right now. And we can see the back and forth nature of it, excuse me, just by the actions of the actor Joe Biden in recent days. On September 7th, just yesterday, the actor continued the national emergency with respect to foreign interference in or undermining public confidence in United States elections. Taken from whitehouse.gov, on September 12, 2018, by Executive Order 13848, the president declared a national emergency pursuant to the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That's 50 U.S.C. 1701, Presidential Authority in Wartime and National Defense, to deal with the unusual and extraordinary threat to national security and foreign policy constituted by the threat of foreign interference in or undermining public confidence in United States elections. Although there has been no evidence of a foreign power altering the outcomes of vote tabulation in any United States election, foreign powers have historically sought to exploit America's free and open political system. In recent years, the proliferation of digital devices and internet-based communications has created significant vulnerabilities and magnified the scope and intensity of the threat of foreign interference. The ability of persons located in whole or in substantial part outside the United States to interfere in or undermine public confidence in United States elections, including through the unauthorized accessing of election and campaign infrastructure or the covert distribution of propaganda, and disinformation at mainstream media continues to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. For this reason, the national emergency declared on September 12, 2018 must continue in effect beyond September 12, 2023. Therefore, in accordance with Section 202D of the National Emergencies Act, which is 50 U.S.C. 1622, I am continuing for 1 year the national emergency declared in Executive Order 13848 with respect to the threat of foreign interference in or undermining public confidence in United States elections. This notice shall be published in the Federal Register and transmitted to the Congress. Now, here is a guy who optically has cheated his way into office, right? Here is a guy who, at the time when this war really ramped up with the launch of COVID-19 and the globalist depopulation, totalitarian power grab status that came with the 2019-2020 period of time. We've got a Manchurian candidate who is now extending the very national emergency, and others as well, which we'll get to in just a moment, that will allow for expanded and extraordinary authority and scope of operation for the United States to take the measures, and the militaries of the United States to take the measures necessary to preserve national security, national function, and also to assault, if you will, on every level that's allowable, individuals, entities, organizations that interfered in or undermined the confidence in United States elections. That directly includes, the information apparatus matrix, that includes the NGO hegemony, that includes the absolute litany of 501c3 organizations that held ballots or helped distribute ballots or took in donations to encourage the Democrat side, right? That applies even to the U.S. Post and the U.S. Postal Service, right? This is one of the most effective weapons of war that has been launched in a legal space in a very long time, I think, in world history. And what we are seeing through the actor that's currently installed like a toilet in the presidency office of the United States is the continuation of the very emergency that is going to allow for those authorities to eventually bring him, his administration, and all of his cronies that have come along with him to the slaughter down to the House. Now, what I find very interesting is on September the 7th, the exact same day, September the 7th of 2023, we had a continuation of the national emergency with respect to persons who commit, threaten to commit, or support terrorism. What has occurred in the world in the last few years? What has been occurring in the world for a very long time at the behest of the CIA, the H.W. Bush clan, the 9/11 and post 9/11 world, and the intelligence administrative state? We've seen nothing but differing levels of terrorism, but terrorism nonetheless, executed all around the world. We've seen economic terrorism. We've seen biological terrorism. We've seen violations of the Nuremberg Code. We've seen crimes against humanity and children. We've seen insurgency and insurrection. We've seen color revolutions, which amounts to foreign terroristic interference in the democratic process of nation states. And what I find really interesting about this particular extension is that it pertains directly to Executive Order 13886, which modified and augmented Executive Order 13224. Let's read this together. On September the 23rd of 2001, by Executive Order 13224, 12 days after 9/11, the president, W. Bush at the time, declared a national emergency pursuant to the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, 50 U.S.C. 1701, Presidential Authority with National Emergencies, to deal with the unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States constituted by the grave acts of terrorism and threats of terrorism committed by foreign terrorists, including the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001 in New York and Pennsylvania, and against the Pentagon, and the continuing and immediate threat of further attacks against United States nationals or the U.S. On September 9, 2019, the president signed Executive Order 13886 to strengthen and consolidate sanctions to combat the continuing threat posed by international terrorism and to take additional steps to deal with the national emergency which was declared in Executive Order 13224. The actions of persons who commit, threaten to commit, or support terrorism And this would include the military-industrial complex, the bureaucratic community, the academic community, the mainstream media community, the local health and welfare practitioners, the local news and journalistic outlets, anyone who committed, threatened to commit, or supported terrorism continues to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. For this reason, the national emergency declared in Executive Order 13224 of September 23, 2001, as amended, and the measures adopted to deal with that emergency must continue in effect beyond September 23rd of 2023. Therefore, in accordance with Section 202D of the National Emergencies Act, 50 U.S.C. 1622, I am continuing for 1 year the national emergency with respect to persons who commit, threaten to commit, or support terrorism declared in Executive Order 13224 as amended. Do you see the poetry here? Do you see the justice taking place? We are literally using the infrastructure, scaffolding, and design blueprint that they outfitted for their own gain, and we are turning it against them at every feasible moment available, right? We are utilizing the legal structure that they built to exclude all of us and include all of them and insulate all of them behind a very disingenuous, nebulous, opaque layer of secrecy and shadowy behavior. And we are forcing that out into the light by weaponizing it against them in an effective and legal fashion, in the same fashion and in the same context that has been done against us for a very, very long time. The poetry, I don't think, could get much deeper than that. I don't think it could get any better than that. We are truly at war. This is a power struggle between the right of we the people to have control over our associations, our states, our communities, control over the different levers of society that have been created here under this corporate construct, which was launched in 1871, begun during the U.S. Civil War, as a matter of fact. And we are looking to invert that finally after a very, very long time. And it is absolutely a conflict to do so. The Trump administration knew, as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, that this conflict was inevitably going to come. The Trump administration was very aware that we were going to see a number of events popping off in response to the biological act of global terrorism that was the launch of the pandemic and the totalitarian globalist power grab. And so we have been insulated, right? We have been taken care of in many respects by the necessary military components all around the world stepping in and neutralizing the largest of the threats. But that did not leave all of the threats on the battlefield accounted for. And so we live through what amounts to a worldwide version of a special military operation, much like what Russia has waged in Ukraine, certainly since the Trump presidency, but absolutely since January 19 and January 20th of 2021. And to give us further evidence of just the same, on August the 16th, so about 2 to 3 weeks ago now, we had a briefing launched by the Chief of Nuclear, Chemical, and Biological Protection of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation. This came from Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov on U.S. military biological activity. Let's go ahead and read this. Is it any wonder that they're attacking us through things like the DEW weapons on Maui and in other areas? Is it any wonder, that they're being forced to deploy their most capable and most secretive assets out into the light? I don't think that it's a wonder at all. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation continues to analyze the military and biological activities of the U.S. and its allies in Ukraine and on the territory of other countries. That would include the African subcontinent and different areas around the world. As we have noted earlier, U.S. military biological activity poses a security threat to many nations around the world. Despite the fact that the stated goals of U.S. programs are to monitor disease incidents, in fact, we see the Pentagon conducting uncontrolled dual-use research in circumvention of international obligations under the Biological Treaty and Weapons Convention. Projects of the American military departments are primarily aimed at studying potential agents of biological weapons, anthrax, tularemia, coronavirus, as well as pathogens of economically significant infections, pathogenic avian influenza, and African swine fever. There is a clear trend. Pathogens that fall within the Pentagon's area of interest, such as COVID-19, African swine fever, and others, subsequently become pandemic pathogens, and American pharmaceutical companies are the beneficiaries. Earlier, we informed about the possible involvement of the U.S. Agency for International Development, that would be USAID, in the emergence of the new coronavirus. Now, this is the same group that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. went out publicly recently stating and claiming, and that Anons have known for a long time, is nothing more than an international slush fund watering hole headed by the CIA with very little oversight and very little restriction. The EcoHealth Alliance intermediary organization plays a key role in implementing projects to study this pathogen. Since 2015, the specialists of this company have been studying the diversity of the bat population, searching for new strains of coronavirus and mechanisms of transmission from animals to humans. A total of over 2,500 have been researched. On October 18 of 2019, 2 months before the first official reports about the emergence of the new coronavirus infection in China, Johns Hopkins University conducted Event 201 in New York. This exercise simulated the epidemic of a previously unknown coronavirus that, according to the scenario, was transmitted from bats to humans via a porcine organism, the intermediary virus carrier. The development of the pandemic under this scenario, as well as the implementation of EcoHealth Alliance projects, raises questions about the possible intentional nature of COVID-19 and the U.S. involvement in the incident. So we have a first world superpower with a very advanced and very capable, technically competent military coming out and stating that the United States manufactured COVID-19. The next steps taken by the United States to realize strategic plans in establishing global biological control was the creation of the Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response Policy. Anons, we talked about this in a recent audio file. The official establishment of the office was posted on 21 July 2023 on the White House's website. It is envisaged that the new structure will be responsible for setting the course and coordinating actions to combat known and unknown biological challenges, including pathogens that could trigger another global emergency. The priorities of this office include work on vaccines and drugs to relieve viruses and their genetically modified variants, as well as the introduction of advanced technologies in bioproduction. Retired Air Force Major General Paul Friedrich, Special Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Global Health Security and Biodefense at the National Security Council, will head the structure. Thus, as in 2019, the U.S. has begun preparing for a new pandemic by searching for virus mutations. We do not rule out that the United States will use of so-called defensive technologies for offensive purposes, as well as for global governance by creating crisis situations of a biological nature. In doing so, the White House is creating a new government agency and at the same time making an attempt to allay the world's concerns about its illegal biological activities. The U.S. Army Research for Infectious Disease, currently headed by Colonel Constance Jenkins, will play a leading role in the military department's biomedical warfare program. It should be noted that this institute was established at Fort Detrick. Anons, that's the same biological weapons laboratory owned by the CIA primarily that launched anthrax against a sitting U.S. Congress when they were stonewalling the Patriot Act. Fort Detrick is a bioweapons development facility and has a maximum biological containment level of 4, BSL-4. It is a major part of the Pentagon's established electronic integrated disease surveillance system. Documents obtained during the special military operation show that the institution is directly involved in the collection of dangerous pathogens in various regions of the world, testing of unregistered drugs, as well as the implementation of dual-use programs ordered by the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. The U.S. Army Institute of Infectious Disease has been involved in U.S. biological programs in Ukraine. Thus, representatives of the Institute actively conducted projects codenamed UP1 and UP8. These projects investigated the possibility of using arthropods to spread rickets, tick-borne encephalitis virus, and Congo Crimean hemorrhagic fever and hantaviruses. Representatives of the Institute are working in South America, Africa, Transcaucasia, and Southeast Asia. Laboratory facilities of the Medical Research Center of the Navy and the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research are used for it. The 2014 to 2016 Ebola outbreak in Uganda, Kenya, Guinea, and Liberia prompted a major expansion of the presence of U.S. Army Institute of Infectious Disease personnel in these African countries to obtain live virus samples. Thus, the available production and experimental base of the Institute makes it possible to participate in global monitoring of the biological situation and to carry out a full range of military applied work with dangerous pathogens, components of biological weapons, including work to enhance the pathogenic properties of pathogens of dangerous human and animal diseases. Apologies, I got off track there reading. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation has obtained documents allowing it to expand the Ukrainian military biological dossier as well. Today, we would like to supplement the list with representatives of Ukrainian state institutions and private companies involved in the implementation of United States military biological weapons programs. They are Natalia Dudko, the project coordinator and senior specialist of the STCU. For 25 years, she coordinated more than 250 projects. Lyudmila Chernenko, General Director of the Center for Public Health of the Ministry of Health of Ukraine. She is on the list of Ukrainian specialists who have participated in U.S.-funded research. Alexander Matskov, Deputy General Director of the Center for Public Health of the Ministry of Health of Ukraine. He oversaw the implementation of a U.S.-funded dual-use project on COVID-19. The Russian Defense Ministry will continue to publish the names of officials of biotechnology corporations and other Pentagon contractors involved in the implementation of U.S. military biological programs on the territory of Ukraine. We are absolutely at war, and we are absolutely winning this war, and they are absolutely scared, Patriots. They are in a position that they've never been in before, where they no longer have the full and reliable loyalty of a militarized mighty fist. It does not exist. It's a broken hand that's behind them now. They don't know which fingers are going to come to the battle in aid and which fingers are going to come to the battle seeking to choke them out. As if we needed more proof that this really is a war, we had a journal article come out. It actually ran in the Western Journal just recently that absolutely blew me away. Let me see if I can get over here to the page. Give me just a moment, Anons. All right, taken from the westernjournal.com, an article from September the 2nd, so not quite a week ago now, 2023 at 12 in the afternoon. Trump deep fake? Recent interview raises suspicions it wasn't really him. Is this odd interview with former President Trump a deep fake or a prank? As unlikely as that may seem, a Thursday phone interview featuring the GOP primary frontrunner set off a storm of speculation regarding its authenticity. The 17-minute interview, which took place on the conservative platform Real America's Voice, has raised doubts among many, prompting questions about whether it was indeed the 45th president or a sophisticated deep fake impersonation. During the conversation with Real America Voice hosts John Solomon and Amanda Head, many listeners noticed that Trump's voice seemingly sounded different from his familiar, typically robust tone. Listeners also noted that he appeared to speak with an unusual lisp and a higher pitch than his well-known baritone. While the interview raised eyebrows and prompted widespread skepticism, Trump himself seemed unperturbed, promoting it on his TruthSocial platform. Get here. Trump's unmistakable voice, however, one of the most recognizable in the world, sounded oddly disjointed and artificial, further fueling suspicions that something was amiss, and you can judge for yourself below. So where was President Trump when this interview occurred? What was really going on? What was the 45th president up to? Why have we seen such activity geared towards highlighting the corruption in the justice system from not only President Trump, but many other individuals across TruthSocial and other platforms in recent weeks? What is occurring or has been occurring in the background for a long time, right? These are the questions I think that we have to ask now that we know that we're in the middle of an espionage, irregular style war that really is playing for keeps. At the end of the day, what we draw out of this, what we achieve in this conflict will determine the safety and security and really the status of the world as we know it for our children and our grandchildren as we go forward. Failure is not an option, and we will not fail, and we cannot fail. the Trump trials, I think, are going to be a major portion of this process, right? In the same fashion that we've seen very compelling trials televised in years prior, we're going to see a similar style pomp and circumstance given to the introduction of true bona fide interfering evidence in the electoral system in the United States. And it's going to come from an individual and a number of people within that individual's orbit who would have standing and clout at all different levels in the judicial system, local, county, state, and federal. And really it is set up right now as a RICO crime in some sectors anyway. And so I think what we're going to see here, quite frankly, is a historic moment, a very powerful series of proceedings that will show to the American people who the real president should be, who the real president needs to be. And we're going to set up a position, I think, for the actor Biden administration, the Manchurian administration, all of the deep state governmental apparatus, the deep state bureaucratic apparatus, everyone that's involved on the other side of the fence is really going to have, I think, a catalyzing moment where the choice will be made very clear. And there may not be any going back from that point forward. We know that these trials are set to begin as early as, I believe, March 4th, which is the day before Super Tuesday this coming year. But I find it fascinating that March 4th is sometimes referred to as a constitutional day because the first Wednesday in March has fallen on March 4th before. The inauguration of a new government typically has occurred constitutionally in the United States by the Constitution of the Republic on the first Wednesday in March. I think that we see a significant escalation of events from our deep state adversaries, what remains of that hidden military, mercenary, secret technology complex out there around the world, up to and including an ICBM scare and a power grab in the form of canceling the 2024 general election for the presidency. And I know that those are extreme statements, but let me explain what I mean by that. We know that Kim has come into play several times along in this journey. Kim, shown shortly after the meeting with POTUS, Q highlights that Kim is smiling, that Kim's strings have been cut. They met in Singapore and had a very productive conversation, right? President Trump treated the North Koreans and the North Korean leader with respect and dignity. And I think that helped to foster some trust as far as it pertains to disconnecting that country and that economy and that population of the world from the globalist cabalist system. And the infiltration present in their government is just as deep and is just as heinous as the infiltration present in ours and everywhere else around the world. In fact, it may be even worse. I can't really qualify and say. But President Trump has highlighted Kim a number of different times along in this journey, called him his friend, said that he has a big red button. We've got pictures of Kim that have come out online just in the last couple of years, showcasing very powerful North Korean missiles. North Korea is now in initial discussions with the Russian Federation to begin military technical cooperation. I mean, that right there is a disconnection almost completely from the Kabbalist, Luciferian, Switzerland-based locus of control. When we have the Russian Federation, who is arguably the most hated country in the world, if you are the Luciferian cabal, just because of the ancient rivalry that goes back with that and some of the bad blood that goes back with that, this particular nation in alliance with China, which has begun breaking away itself, right? And we've seen a number of individuals within the Chinese Communist Party removed covertly and even overtly in different points along in this journey over the last just really 9 to 10 months at this point. We now have these two powers getting North Korea, Iran, several countries in the Middle East, other important power players who are sort of taking steps and taking matters into their own hands to defend themselves against what they knew was going to be a global militarized power grab that was going to involve a war as it pertained to their nations. And we're sort of disconnecting them from those fears and those concerns and those worries. And in so doing, I think that we see a severe escalation of events from what military and mercenary intelligence community actors still remain in the deep state complex and the sleeper cells and activation cells that are still around the world. The ICBM threat, for example, is one of the main issues that I think that we're going to run into. And I think the reason, or one of the main reasons we're going to run into that, is because of the history with the missiles and the Q drops and the usage of missile systems, really all throughout this period of time, going right back to the earliest days of the Trump administration, and then moving onward and forward even to the current times, where we have Russia now activating their Satan II ICBM ballistic missile arrays, which are intercontinental missiles that are designed to strike very far away foreign lands with very, very high power weapons. So let's come over here. We're going to highlight here some steps that I believe the commander-in-chief and former president optically, the 45th president, has taken to protect us in these particular moments. Issued on April the 28th, 2020, merely 1 month after the emergency that called to active duty 1 million National Guard soldiers and placed them on a period of duty not longer than 24 months, which has been extended several times at this point, we had a memorandum issued from the Trump administration on providing continued federal support for governors' use of the National Guard to respond to COVID-19 and facilitate economic recovery. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including the Robert Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act, and Section 502 of Title 32 United States Code, it is hereby ordered. It is the policy of the United States to take measures to assist state governors under the Stafford Act in their responses to all threats and hazards to the American people in their respective states. On March 13 of 2020, I declared a national emergency recognizing the threat that COVID-19, the disease caused by the novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2, and the virus poses to the nation's healthcare systems. I also determined that same day that the COVID-19 outbreak constituted an emergency of nationwide scope. Considering the profound and unique public health risks posed by the ongoing outbreak of COVID-19, the need for close cooperation and mutual assistance between the federal government and the states is greater than at any time in recent history. This need remains as the United States continues to battle the public health threat posed by the virus, while transitioning to a period of increased economic activity. To provide maximum support to the governor of the state of North Dakota, as he makes decisions about the responses required to address local conditions, I am taking the actions set forth in sections 2, 3, and 4 of this document. The governor of North Dakota, one of the very first governors to be highlighted out through executive memorandum from the president as it pertains to military activity and their own National Guard. Section 2 reads, let me get over here to it. Maximize assistance to the governor of the state of North Dakota to facilitate federal support with respect to the use of National Guard units under state control. I am directing the Federal Emergency Management Agency of the Department of Homeland Security to fund 100% of the emergency assistance activities associated with preventing, mitigating, and responding to the threat to public health, safety, and security posed by the virus that North Dakota undertakes using its National Guard forces. Section 3 reads, support of operations or missions to prevent and respond to the threat. I am directing the SecDef to the maximum extent feasible and consistent with mission requirements, including geographic proximity, to request pursuant to 32 United States Code 502 that the governor of the state of North Dakota order National Guard forces to perform duty to fulfill mission assignments on a fully reimbursable basis that FEMA issues to the Department of Defense for the purpose of supporting state and local emergency assistance efforts under the Stafford Act. This is really a major note, Patriots. What we have here is the Trump administration directing the Secretary of Defense and offering federal assistance to the state of North Dakota as it pertains to the usage of their National Guard. This is the Trump administration stating that we will pay for all of it. We'll take on all of the cost. We'll take over all of the assignment details. We'll do all of it, right? We'll reimburse 100% of whatever it costs to maintain and to keep our communities and our public health and safety and intact by usage of your National Guard. So why North Dakota? A lot of people know that North Dakota is home to Minot Air Force Base, but what a lot of people don't know is that Minot Air Force Base is home. You see here. Let me find out the exact one. It's over here. There it is. Minot is home to the 91st Missile Wing. Minot is headquarters for the 91st Missile, one of the Air Force's 3 operational nuclear missile units. Minutemen missiles allow the wing to achieve its mission, which is to defend the nation with a combat-ready nuclear force. Consisting of 3 groups, the 91st Op Group, the 91st Maintenance Group, and the 91st Secure Force Group. The 91st Missile Wing has approximately 1,800 professionals working together to keep these missiles on high alert. So we have in North Dakota our weapons of mass destruction in silos. We also have in North Dakota, if you do a lot of digging on this, and we don't have time on our file today, unfortunately, what we also have in North Dakota is a significant concentration of the ICBM detection and alert system that functions for the North American homeland, the U.S. homeland continental shelf itself, right? And Space Force is currently managing all of those communications, all of those back and forths, alert systems, early warning systems, all of those things pursuant to the changes in communications command and authority that have happened in the last 12 months in the United States military. So it's not a surprise then that we would have the United States military involved on a missile defense level. And one of the reasons I believe that the Lahaina fire, that attack occurred on Maui, was to undermine the ability of Space Force to effectively respond to threat actors in the Pacific. And I do believe that North Korea will be one of the major threat actors, potentially even predating some sort of open conflict with China as we go through this process and walk further, down the road of the awakening. So what can we expect as we come down the road of the awakening, right? Where can we expect to be going here? We'll get to the issue of the 2024 election in just a moment, but what happens, in the immediate weeks and months? What can we expect to happen? The true answer, Patriots, is I really don't fully know. What I do understand is that this is a period of time not unlike the late 1850s and early 1860s within the United States. It's a period of time not unlike the World War II and the immediate years leading up to World War II, essentially that decade from 1929 all of the way up to 39, and then from 39 up to really what amounts to 48, 49. We've also got symbolism that connects us to the John F. Kennedy administration days, the early 1960s, the space race, right? They've talked actively about a new Cuban Missile Crisis with China building spy bases and military equipment in Cuba. China sort of being the CCP, sort of being the new Soviet Union in some regards. And so there's many parallels that this mercenary complex is being drawn out into sort of performing by this coordinated military alliance, which I believe has neutered their ability to change their playbook, right? They're very unoriginal anyway, but when we took out their command and control under the Trump administration, and then we have sort of forced their hand at expert irregular warfare ever since, we're sort of seeing the same plays playing out much more obviously and in a sort of a panicked, very rapid fashion way. They sort of know that their time is up. And how could you not know, with the Great Awakening now becoming a topic matter on the lips of people at dinner tables, on vacations, and in the movie theaters and in the grocery stores and things like this, these subjects that we're talking about, the conversation itself, the stigma, if you will, is starting to go away, is starting to fade, and people are beginning to exchange information with one another, not unlike what occurred initially in late 2019 and all through the 2020 year with COVID and then the steal of the election, which catalyzed what I believe to be all of you out there, or many of you out there, into the patriotic sort of Paul Revere Minutemen style fold. And so what can we expect, in the coming weeks? It's anybody's guess, but I think that we can draw some information from the media, from the symbolism, from the historic relevance of the situations and events that we're all living through, and we can look to those dates and look to those time periods throughout our walk. Different things between the feast days of the ancient Hebrew calendar and the lunar-based model, up to the symbolic dates that have occurred really in the last 150 years, certainly in the history of the United States, but also all around the world, and the different treaties and ratifications of legal constructs that have been erected by we the people, and in some cases subverted and captured and manipulated. One of those dates being 9/23/2001 was the day where a military dictatorship completed its silent takeover of the American governmental apparatus. From that day forward, the American people have not been a free people. The United States has existed in a state of militarized national emergency control and expanded war powers of the president under 50 USC Section 1701 since September 23rd of 2001, 12 days after the September 11th terrorist attacks, which we know were perpetrated by the W. Bush administration, the FBI, and in coordination with the CIA and several foreign intelligence communities to include MI6, MI5, the Mossad, the New Zealand intelligence community, and others. And so September the 23rd, I think, is going to be a very significant day. I think 9/23/23, the symbolism 9/5 by 5, or you could even have it 9/5/7, which is, again, it adds up to 21. And so you've got a lot of the same symbolism that these people really like to exercise and to pull against us. And so I think we should be on the watch for things happening in the month of September, and 9/23, of course, being one of those. And I don't say this, completely empty-handed. I'd like to share a screen with you and actually have all of you witness a video. We're going to watch just a couple of different short snippets before we end our file today. Let's go over here. September the 23rd. This is a video that surfaced online just a few days ago, or just a couple of weeks ago, excuse me. I'll do my best to disconnect here so that you all can hear the sound. I think it's well worth your watch. Well, it's not a conclusive video or an assertion by any means. I find it very fascinating that the same media, CIA-controlled Mockingbird MK Ultra apparatus that has been used to give us so much goofing, so much sort of in your face without being in your face, karmic consent fodder, if you will, this dream spell that's been created around all humanity. I find it fascinating that they highlight in such exquisite detail the sequence of numbers 9, 2, 3, and 9, 3, 2. And so I would caution everyone out there to be aware that these people really love their symbols. And as we go through this process, dragging the rest of them out into the light, what do we still have left? We still have the crushing of the dollar. We still have the introduction to humanity of the extraterrestrial or other terrestrial life entities, right? That reality out there, other sentient beings. We still have the removal of forward deployed military forces. We have to wonder, how will all of these things be accomplished as we also, excuse me, as we also sort of drag out into the light and beat down and put into submission traitors and saboteurs within our own ranks at all levels of society everywhere? And the answer is deliberately focused, assuredly, very carefully, but probably not rapidly. And that's one of the main issues that I think a lot of people out there are beginning to say, well, what's it going to take? What I think it's going to take is actually the actor Joe Biden, the Manchurian candidate Joe Biden, taking extraordinary powers to fully establish himself as a military dictatorship within the United States of America. And I think that that's where we head, probably coinciding with the Trump trials of next year and the televised reality that the election has been absolutely stolen and taken away from we the people. We will see a power grab, if you will, a consolidation or an attempt at consolidation of the electoral process and a suspension of the 2024 election. Now, a lot of people out there are saying, how is that possible? The president can't do that. This can't be done. The reality of the matter is it can, and it can be done under wartime emergency powers of the president, 50 USC section 1701, section 1702, along with the 1973 War Powers Resolution, which allows the President of the United States, in the absence of a declaration of war, to commit the United States Armed Forces to hostile situations and to invoke all statutory provisions currently allocated by law and active national emergency situations to combat any threat to the United States of America. And this would be up to and including the regulation of public health activities, which includes the election infrastructure system here in the United States of America. So it's sort of an end run around the constitutional process, but it is an effective way that the actor Joe Biden can actually suspend the electoral process in the United States and cancel, for lack of a better term, the 2024 election, solidifying a military dictatorship, a deep state locus of control, and sort of showcasing to the world, I think, and to the American citizenry, and also the militant left, that the very individual that they thought was this horrible, fascist, terrible dictator is now being robbed not only from his rightful place at the presidency, but now being prevented from ever being able to occupy the office again because the electoral system is being temporarily suspended due to national emergency. Now, again, this statement is not being made, and I'm not making this statement to you without a significant number. Pardon me just a moment here. There we go. Without a significant number of research hours. I've read the 1973 War Powers Resolution several times. It's a very, very convincing document. It essentially states that the president, as commander-in-chief, has broad and unfettered authority so long as he is acting within constructs that are already applicable in United States code. And we know that a number of these constructs already are, to take whatever means are necessary to ensure the continuity and continuation of the society. And this would include affecting things like the electoral process. And so now I'm going to share a video that came out with you not very long ago, where Amazon, Jeff Bezos's AI Alexa, seems to agree with this assertion. Come out here, share this. Pardon me just a moment. Let me make sure that we're turned up here, and I will I'll disconnect this microphone so that you all can hear this video. Patriots, we're coming into a very powerful time in the United States history and in the history of the world. We're coming into the time where the sunshine patriots and the fair weather friends will begin to question where they're at and what they're doing and whether or not it's worth it. We're coming into a time where those that have grit and mettle, those that understand what's happening in the world and that wish to see a world built better for our future and for our children will be forced to preserve the consciousness of a very reactive, very panicky mass population all around the world. We are witnessing a marching forward and an active destruction of biological laboratories. We are witnessing weather warfare being activated by both sides. We are witnessing destruction of a number of different tunneling systems all around the world in different theaters and sectors on different continents simultaneously occurring. The assault is real. The assault is there. We are witnessing the convening, if you will, of strategic meeting of the minds across 22 time zones and active militaries all around the world, positioning themselves for some sort of escalation or some sort of event. We are coming into a period of time where the United States government, Inc., fiscal year will end and the new October year will begin, right? We're coming into the October surprise season, which is never a surprise. We're coming into all of these different components, the Trump trials, the imminent blackout, the rationing of energy already beginning in different U.S. states, right? We're witnessing movement of military assets across different regions of the United States and in different regions of the world. And we are actively bearing witness to a kinetic back and forth between good actors and bad actors from whatever side they're on that is occurring within the public and semi-public space. It could not be more exciting, and it could not be more terrifying all at the same time. Keep your head down, keep your eyes forward, always walk in love and realize that we win this battle, but we do not win anything if we sit down or if we scare off. We do not win anything if we quit the discussion. We do not win anything if we decide that we've just had it and we can't take it anymore, and so we're throwing in the towel, right? The enemy doesn't throw in the towel. The enemy marches in lockstep like a grinder forward, destroying everything in its path. We must do the same, and we will do the same. Hang in there, Patriots. It's going to be a tough time, but as long as I'm able to come to you on the airwaves, I'll be here with you in heart and spirit, and we'll be able to walk through this together. We take this journey together, one step at a time. Thanks, everyone. Be safe. We'll speak again soon. This is SGAnon. Bye-bye.